You're listening to BQN. Assimilate the audio.
Hi, I'm Mitch.
And I am Davey.
And we are
The
Bargain Bin Gamers.
That was very subdued.
Why are you being so subdued?
I don't know. I just feel like we need to do things differently around here sometimes, young Mitchell.
Mhm.
And this is the persona I'm taking on for the remainder of this episode.
I bet the people that we're interviewing are going to be really keen to hear you talk like this.
yes. And this, dear listeners and viewers, is the podcast YouTube show and occasional Twitch stream where we put the gay in gaming.
While also looking after your hip pocket and also apparently supporting David Attenborough.
Yes. Okay, I'm over that now. It's done.
Thank God.
Oh, yes. But supporting David Attenborough is one thing, but supporting us is definitely a really, really good thing
And
too.
how could they do that?
Well, I would just like to give a shout out to all of our BQN podcast Patreon subscribers, especially to this show's associate producer, Sam Johnson. Sam Johnson.
Oh, Sam.
Yeah, his name is Sam and his last name is Johnson.
Please don't leave, Sam.
Never leave us. No, thank you. So our network patrons help keep these shows coming to you loud and free, and all of the shows across the network, by the way, which there are many, many of. The financial support we get does help for everything that we need. Editing software and equipment, all that kind of stuff costs money. And you are helping us to do that. All of it goes into creating the content for you. So thank you so much. If you would like to consider supporting the network on Patreon, you can head over to patreon.com/BQN. For as little as $1 to $2 a month, you get all kinds of crazy network perks. And that scale does go up, which includes early releases, bonus content, Patreon-only podcasts shows as well. And access to our monthly Zoom as well, which is really, really cool. So get on over and check it out.
And listen, people have dropped a couple bucks on us over the few years outside of the pod, so why not do it while we're on pod?
Not really the story I wanted to tell today, but info that way you will.
I think it was just leading into our topic for the day, really.
And what is it?
It's a fantastic 3D web novelization?
What did you call it?
3D novelization?
You could call it not a virtual. I guess you could call it it's just like a graphic novel, like a digital graphic novel
that you get to play through.
That you get to play through, yeah. So this, as we continue our journey through the shortlist of last year's Melbourne Queer Gaming Festival, which we are just loving. So this is a game called Straight ? Exclamation point.
There we go. That's going to be a joke that you'll get if you keep listening to this episode.
So I reached out to the writer and developer of Straight, an individual by the name of Aaron, and we got to spend some time with Aaron. And look, you're in for a treat with this one.
Definitely.
We really enjoyed talking to Aaron about everything that's just gone into what is a very unique and personal experience. I think gay men in particular will get a lot out of this. It's a coming of age story. It is about learning about sexuality. It is about body positivity. It's about all these things.
It's about queer and straight relations.
Yeah.
It's a very raw story. It's very, as Aaron would put it, cringy.
In time,
but
intentionally so.
Intentionally so, yeah. So it's very much it's a coming of age story about, I guess, queer acceptance and all that good fuzzy stuff.
Yep. So this is a pre-recorded interview with Aaron, an audio only. This is an audio only interview. So if you are on the YouTube version, you are going to get a slightly different experience to usual. But do stick around. If you are on the audio podcast, then you have no idea what we look like. So that's fine as well. So,
Honestly, thank God.
yeah, you're the lucky ones in this case. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy our interview with Aaron, the developer of Straight.
Straight?
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 Straight. All right. Aaron, writer and creator and developer of Straight ? Apostrophe mark. Well,
Apostrophe mark?
Apostrophe mark.
Exclamation mark.
Exclamation mark. What's an apostrophe mark?
I don't know.
Anyway,
I'll roll with it. It works. It works. Let's roll with it.
Our podcast.
That was me welcoming you to our podcast and completely fucking it up. But Aaron, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. I am super grateful. I'm excited. Let's do this.
Yeah, your game is one of the many that has come up in our research of queer indie titles through predominantly being featured in the Melbourne Queer Gaming Festival late last year. Were you aware that you got included in the Melbourne Gaming Festival?
I was. When I started this project, I never expected to be like, I didn't even know there were awards things or anything. So like the fact that one existed, like that was kind of the first, like, what the hell? Then once I got accepted into the thing, I made the first round. That was crazy. And then they did the second round. I can't remember what they called it, but the finalist kind of thing. Yeah, that came out of nowhere. I never thought that I would be included on an awards thing. So that was crazy.
For our audience who might not be aware of the project, how would you describe Straight?
In short, it's a visual novel. I call it a cinematic visual novel. I think traditionally a lot of the visual novel genre is typically a lot of choices, a lot of dating sims and stuff. You'll have like a handful of people, and what you do to one person maybe negatively affects somebody else. I didn't use sprites. I only went one route, essentially because I'd never done this before. So I decided rather than have 5 or 6 different dating routes and just half-ass all of them, I was like, screw it. I'm going to do one, and I'm going to do it right. It's less stuff to juggle. I tend to be a pretty scattered individual anyways. It was less stuff for me to juggle. And I was like, what the hell? Like I'll just have one route and we'll go from there. And I call it a cinematic visual novel simply because I'm not using sprites. It's all CGs. I don't have like camera experience or anything like that, but I tried to make things a little more artistic and cinematic with a lot of the shots. That's very much seen more in the revamp. It's a very existential story. It's a slice of life story. It's a coming of age story. Essentially, it's the main character is Zach. He's 19. The story picks up on his first day of college when he meets his roommate Braden. It is a trope. Like it's a very obvious, hey, I'm going to start out somewhere and we're going to see kind of where it goes. And the bulk of the story is Zach acts pretty easygoing early on in the story, but as the narrative unfolds, we learn that he has a lot of anxiety. He overthinks the shit out of stuff. I mean, he's not quite as comfortable with himself and who he is, particularly when it comes to sexuality and stuff. He has a hard time with that. He fights that. He feels that it's wrong. He hides it. And essentially the story is him learning to process those feelings, trying to make peace with those. His head is, I think, kind of an echo chamber for the most part. And while he's a smart guy, he's never been able to fix these things on his own, which kind of cues in some of the secondary characters that are very different than he is. And they kind of offset and challenge that because he couldn't do it on his own. If he could, he would have done it a long time ago and wouldn't had a story in the first place.
And I mean, not to get in too deep too early, but this sounds like quite the passion project. And obviously there's a bit of self-reflection in there, dare I say. What inspired the creation? Like why create such a deep and nuanced tale that I guess you could see yourself in?
The story behind it is not so deep. At least where it started. I shit you not, it started on a dare. I was watching a TV show here in the States. It was called American Horror Story, and we were watching. It was okay. It was the third season. It was about witches and stuff. And I was watching the show, and I got irritated while I was watching the show. While I was watching with this buddy of mine, because something tragic would happen. Someone would die, like on the show or something, and then like 2 episodes later, they'd bring them back. And then somebody else would die and they'd bring them back. And I was like, this magic stuff sucks. Like there was no consequence in the story at all. And I remember saying, this writing sucks. And my buddy's like, well, he gave me the typical half-ass. Well, if you think you could do better, why don't you? So that's kind of what started it. It was, I never planned to share the story. It was something I was going to do for myself, kind of a fictional diary. I ended up mentioning it on a forum back in 2017 when I was working on the demo, and somebody's like, share it. And okay, maybe I'll get some feedback. And it kind of blossomed from there. That it was kind of an accident that I would have finished the story regardless, because it was something that I wanted to do. And maybe I would have let my buddy read it if it didn't suck too bad. The personal side was very much a lot of, I struggled from a young age at accepting my own sexuality. I'm a fairly smart guy, and much the same way as Zach, my head was an echo chamber from a small town. I think with that small town attitude, if you're not like everybody else, then you want to fit in because it's so easy for everybody else in town to notice you or stick out or whatever. Super religious town, obviously. Like I was destined for the fiery pits. So like I had a hard time accepting that, and I thought it, and I figured that by the time that I got to the end, I guess, of my journey in terms of accepting a lot of that stuff, I figured if I could write a story in which a character actually figured out the solutions to a lot of those things, rather than just saying, okay, well, we'll have pride, like, or you figure it out or something like that. I wanted to show the struggle, and I wanted to show a realistic depiction of how do you actually arrive at that making peace, with that feeling. And that's where a lot of the personal stuff comes in. It comes from a lot of the stuff that I got hung up on.
It's probably why you've struck a chord, because I think there's a shared experience there that you've really tapped into, especially amongst gay and queer men of any kind of age. There's a difference in age between Mitch and I. Mitch is in his late 20s. I'm in my early 40s, but I think we both kind of went through the awkward stage, especially the awkward stage that Zach and Braden are going through at the start of this game. One thing I wanted that you said just then that made me almost giggle a little bit. Did the dare in that conversation when you were watching American Horror Story, I feel like that made its way into the game, because there's a scene where Zach and Braden are watching TV together, and Zach says something along the lines of like that. They don't like the show they're watching, and Zach says something along the lines of like, oh, I guess I just like a little bit more conflict in my story. None of this, returning to the status quo bullshit or something.
Yeah.
Something along those lines. Yeah.
Oh yeah. There's a ton of insight. I make fun of myself in the story. I make fun of the characters. I don't necessarily break the fourth wall, obviously. Like there's nobody's like looking at the camera, making jokes and stuff, but there's been jokes on the Discord, like we'd have like a shared inside joke in the Discord, and like somebody dared me to like write in something into the stories, and I just try to figure out a way to weave it into the story just to check the box. What the hell? It'll be funny. Like it's kind of a writing challenge, I guess.
Yeah, I think, and that's why, you can sort of attach yourself to Zach, because I don't know whether there's a lot of yourself, there is a lot of yourself in Zach. You kind of just told us that, but I don't know how much more Zach is based on you, but I think he's quite easy to imprint on as the person who you're experiencing this from his perspective, whether it's an interactive experience or not. You're still, it's through Zach's eyes. Some other stuff I kind of picked up on as well, and I don't know if this was intentional or not, is that awkwardness of being that age and discovering who you are and your sexuality is, there's also a lot of there's a lot of body positivity stuff in there that I picked up on.
Oh yeah,
with
yeah.
Was that intentional? That body positivity?
Oh yeah, God yeah. It obviously the game falls under the adult genre, and I think that's a whole can of worms on why it's in that genre specifically. But yeah, I wanted to normalize a lot of stuff. I think a lot of people specifically in the adult genre, not everybody is built like a porn star, and I wanted to normalize that. I wanted to normalize the body positivity stuff, and I also think that a lot of, especially at that age, when your body's changing, and that can really be a source of anxiety for people. And a lot of the things that both of them struggle with is just trying to fit in, young anxiety and stuff. And I really wanted to pull some of those cliched things that people have a hard time with, Brayden looks young at the beginning of the game. A lot of people feel awkward because they look really young, and maybe everybody else, around them looks much older, and that becomes an issue. Brayden's a little shorter, that was an issue. Just little things like that I wanted. I think it makes the characters a little more realistic. But yeah, I really wanted to confront a lot of those chiseled body kind of stereotypes.
Obviously, having really fantastic focus on things like body positivity and queer experience, but also it being such a personal story. You mentioned it at the start of the podcast where you kind of put your baby out there, and then it was picked up by the Queer Games Festival. How has the reception been around this kind of story? Because you mentioned, it's an adult story. It's deeply personal. Was the feedback really constructive, or is it the opposite?
I warned people at the beginning. I referred to it being a slow burn, because if you put something in the adult genre, people just expect okay, fine, you want a little lead in, okay, the lead in is going to be them ordering the pizza with no money, and then it's just supposed to cut straight to all the nonsense. I warned people it was going to be a slow burn. I think slow burns make it worth it. Once you get to something, and whether that's some naughty adult scene, or whether it's a relationship forming or whatever, if you have to work for it, especially as a reader, if you're drug through all these coals, all the way through the story, that, all that time and investment, you kind of feel like you're stuck in the relationship with these guys. For the most part, the feedback has been really good. I warned people about it being a slow burn, but I also said that it was for a mature audience. And by mature, I really mean people with a frontal lobe.
Vaguely
I don't
look somewhere.
Yeah, this isn't going to cut straight to a lot of these naughty scenes and stuff. But I think that my audience, the majority of people were really receptive to it. There's a scene at the end of chapter 5 in which there's some dishonesty, and it's drama. It's kind of I think the game really starts to pick up then, because that's where things start getting difficult. And I still joke about this too, because Zach tells a massive lie at the end of chapter 5. And I remember this comment on my Patreon that somebody said, "Man, if this isn't resolved by halfway through the first scene in the next update, I'm out of here." Somebody was stomping, and you could see their bottom lip was sticking out and everything. And it was funny because after we got to the end of chapter 6, I got a personal message from that person, and they apologized, and they're like, "Holy shit, that, there was a reason for that." I'm like, yeah, there was. And I think after that point, people stopped questioning it. It just turned into this little ride, this roller coaster, and screw it. Let's just roll with it and see where this thing goes. And people didn't really fight it too much, because they really wanted to make everything worth it. Everything in the story has a purpose.
Your audience is clearly very invested, and it's interesting you talk about the slow burn. And I think reading that on your itch page helped shape the way that I approach this. And I'd been engaging with it for a bit longer than Mitch. And when Mitch went into it, I said, don't treat this like you're playing a game. I treat it like I'm reading a novel, and I read a lot of novels. Yeah. And with a novel, you read a couple of pages at a time, or a chapter at a time. And you can be reading a novel, I think at the moment, I'm reading the Wheel of Time series, which is a very detailed fantasy novel with a lot of time. And then all of a sudden, something happened.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you're like, page turn. And it's kind of like that with this because you have those moments where a lot of relationship is being established between characters like Brayden and Zach. And then you have the moment where, like, I don't know, where one of the moments where Zach walks into the bathroom and embarrasses Brayden, or where Brayden gets a boner in the doctor's office during the physical, right? Like, and that's there's some of that is some of it's kind of tongue in cheek and amusing, but it's also like, I just remember being that age and just
it's cringe,
cracking a boner over nothing.
Yeah,
it is. You hit the nail on the head. It is cringe. It's so young and cringe and just awkward. Which is so palpable,
but relatable.
Relatable. Yeah. I really wanted flawed characters, and I think the cringe aspect is something that like makes you like I don't know, like, and I wrote the damn thing. I don't know how many times like I was pulling my hair, or like I drop my head on the desk, and I'm like I would talk to my characters like I'm crazy, I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Like, but I like the cringe stuff. I think it's funny, and it's young and innocent, and I think it's something all of us have done cringy things, and it
humanizes them as well. It humanizes the character. It means they're not just vessels for like smut, like which I assume sometimes people who would go into this genre would be kind of looking for. It makes them more personable, and then it means that like when they get paid off later in the story, it obviously means more in the narrative. So
sure,
and I assume that means you're quite clear going into this experience that it is a not safe for work content game. Even when I started talking to you about being on the podcast, you were like, just know my project's a bit different from some of the other projects you cover, which is fine. But how did you go about balancing the not safe for work content? Because I realize after having spent a bit of time with Straight that, it's not meant to be pornographic, that it is the scenes which involve nudity and sex and masturbation and all that kind of stuff are complementing what is this exploration of sexuality. How did you find balancing that content with the very human aspects that you've included in the title as well?
I don't really know. I like I said, I've never done this before, so I have nothing to go by. The one thing that I've listened to the entire time was that I knew I was 100% invested in this thing from the beginning. I was passionate about it. Once people started getting attached to the characters, I saw myself as kind of a caretaker. Like I couldn't just get reckless with them. I had to be careful with them because there were people depending on me to treat them fairly and be careful with them. So I always kept that in the back of my mind. So anytime something happens in the story, like I listen to that. There's kind of a voice there, or there's rules in my head, like we don't cross this particular line or that particular line or whatever. And I just kind of listen to the characters. I've never written anything in my life other than like research papers and stuff. Like, so a lot of this was learning as I go. I don't know if I did the damn thing right or not, but I do think there needed to be a purpose to it. I think that just having raw smut in there was pointless. Sometimes there's comedic stuff in there, like you said, like that's cringy or like whatever, because that's just funny. But like you can see that in just any other kind of movie, where there's just random gratuitous nudity that ends up being funny. And I think that's funny just because you can get away with it in the genre. Honestly, like I like the adult genre because there's no rules. And from a writing standpoint, if you don't have rules, you can do whatever the hell you want, like with the character. And like once I started with this genre, I was like, dude, like the adult genre is like they're wasting this away, like with just like horny stuff. Like you guys have no rules. You could do anything you wanted with these characters, and like you're just doing these corny little
just a lot of pizza delivery boys and pool cleaners.
Yeah.
Don't have any,
people getting stuck in dryers and
Listen, if it gets you off, it gets you off.
Yeah. I guess there's a time and a place.
Laundry really does it. Yeah, it must be the laundry.
Did you start out wanting it to be, a not safe for work content story? Was that always the intention, or did that just kind of come about as the inspiration for the story kind of flowed? Like, if I'm going to tell this story, guess what? It's got to have sex and masturbation and dicks and all that kind of stuff, right? Like,
well, honestly, like this kind of goes back to the original Dare thing. When you've never written anything before, you don't know how good it's going to be. And I was like, well, if I'm going to write something, I'm going to pick this genre because, like, from a writing standpoint, people are probably going to be fairly kind if my writing ends up sucking. This is the genre to get away with it in. I was like, man, you know what? I think at my worst, I could probably do better than, that cheesy porn setup or something. That was originally one of the reasons that I picked the genre. And then just trying to normalize a lot of the stuff and have a point to it. I see a lot of adult games where they just throw people into these silly, gratuitous situations, and there's no reason for it. And all the stuff that happens in this story is actually character development. Like I wanted to use that for a purpose to build the story. And I think I don't like a lot of edited stuff anyways. Like, if we're going to talk about something, we may as well talk about it, And especially if I'm going to confront a lot of things like body positivity, like you said, if I'm going to confront a lot of things like that, I can't blur things out. Like, it's just so much easier to normalize it and just throw it out there and say it how it is.
Pretty refreshing though, like just to have like these real conversations about real things. You mentioned something a couple times that I wanted to ask about. Davey's the writer of the two. I don't know how to write anything. I am not skilled at writing. And you've mentioned a couple times that you've never really written anything before other than like papers and things like that. What was the creative process around designing these characters? Obviously, Zach seems like he's got a little bit of a self-insert, but in terms of the characterization, how did you even go about writing this arc and these characters?
I should have sent you guys my original outline. Like, the outline, it is an absolute joke. It's a flow chart that basically just says, like, okay, like, they're going to be in the dorm room, and eventually they're going to have an outfit change, and I have like an arrow drawn. Like, none of the characterization stuff was in there. There was no story stuff. It was basically just a flow chart of like outfit changes, and that was it. That's where I started. I don't outline anything. I didn't plan beyond one update to the next, because once I started reading the story and people were getting excited about the story and like what was going to happen next, I got really jealous because I was like, wait a minute, like, I'm the writer. Like, if I already know what's going to happen, like, I'm mad because like I don't get to be a fanboy too. And I like this story. I like this world. I like the characters. So I was like, fuck it. Like, I'm not planning anything. So I didn't plan anything from one update to the next. When I do the updates, like, I'll outline the update that I'm going to do right then. That's it. Then I write it. Then I do the CGs. I never plug the CGs into the program or anything until all of it's done. And then when I boot it up the first time, I get to see it just like a reader would. So it's as close as I can get. When I did the original version of the story, each update came out. I kind of released it almost episodically for the most part. Each update came out, it pushed the story forward. And honestly, if there's something that I'm going to flex on, I think when I do game updates, like I put out a chunk at a time. A lot of people put out one update like per month, and I can't do that. It usually takes me 2-3 months, but when I drop an update, it's usually 90 minutes long. Like, it's a decent chunk of time, and I liked releasing things episodically like that. And it also gave me room, I think, from the community to kind of like see where they were going, get feedback from them, get reactions. Some people would throw out ideas, which I never went with any of their ideas because I'd be like, well, I can't do that. Like, I want to surprise that person that had a really good idea. So damn it, I can't do that now. Like.
Stop thinking about all these good ideas for my story.
Yeah. I literally had a list of things that I couldn't do.
Oh, damn.
Yeah. Well, feedback is feedback on anything creative, right? You take what you feel is worth taking. You mentioned your updates then, and something that is interesting is that the game currently has, I guess you could say, 1.5 versions, because you've started what you've mentioned a few times already as the remake or the revamp. However, you've only remade about half of the story so far?
Yeah, I'm probably
prompted. What prompted the revamp?
So when I started, I had no idea what I was doing. Like even the art program, like I booted it up the first time and just a blank screen, and I was like, now what the hell do I do? And like I Googled everything, or I watched a YouTube video for every single step, including like the coding and how to like do characters and stuff. There's a lot of people in the community that like the original version of the story, and it's something I've heard time and time again. And honestly, it's kind of embarrassing, but for people that have followed the story for a long time, they saw how grainy and crappy it looked in the beginning, and then by the time they get to the end, like they were literally watching me grow as I was doing it. The beginning of the game, the writing's really crappy. Once I started getting around chapter 5 and 6, I was like, screw it. Like I'm going to do my own thing. Like the hell with this genre. Like I'm going to do my own thing. And I started to, and I think that's when the story really started to take off and get much harder, much more deeper, confrontational about a lot of things with Zach, and the community was eating that stuff up. But the story itself evolved, the quality evolved. By the time that I got to the end of the original, I wrote the last sentence. I sat in my office in silence for like 2 hours, and I was like, now what the hell do I do? I felt like the coyote that caught the roadrunner, you know, like like I was 6 years, I think, like working on it. Like, and it takes a lot of time to do it. I'm usually 6-7 days a week for the most part, like doing it. But the quality by the time that I got to the end was so superior to the way that I started. I felt like I owed it to the community and to the characters to upgrade everything. The original version was super grainy. My computer that I was using when I started was I bought it used. It was 12 years old, like when I started. Each picture that I had to render for the game took 12 hours, like per picture. Like the thing ran so fucking hot that I had in the wintertime, like, and here in the States, like it gets way below freezing around here. I had to shut all the vents in the room in the house, and I could heat that room with my CPU, like while it was rendering these things. You couldn't even touch it. Like the thing was a monster. But I didn't have the hardware to actually do good looking stuff. A lot of the original shots, you just see one character in the screen, 2 max. There's a scene in a park in chapter 6, which was probably one of the most popular sections of the game. And by the time that I got to that, I couldn't, my computer was melting, trying to render the park and all the leaves and like all that shit. And I ended up having to buy a new computer. And that from then on, I could start making a little more complex stuff. As I got better at it, people chipped in money. I got donations to the project and stuff. I eventually was able to upgrade to another computer after that. The revamp is very much me going into the project with more confidence than what I had originally. Like I was very much blind and stumbling around like during the beginning.
In terms of like a work-life schedule, obviously this was a bit of a passion project, but what does the development of a game like this look like? And correct me if I'm wrong, but you have like a small team around you now. How did that kind of come to be?
So in terms of like the work-life balance, it is much easier now than it was in the beginning. When I started this project, I was in grad school. So about halfway through it, I was going to school full-time, working full-time, and I had a full-time internship. Plus I was trying to write this thing and like do all the art and like all that kind of stuff. And I was a little stressed out.
Who needs sleep?
There was like an hour that I was like, yeah, I can sleep like for an hour, like for a day. That was nuts. And now I can't remember when I did it. I want to say it was like 2021. around COVID, things were starting to close down and everything. My employer, where I was working at, I was a therapist, and like there were some issues with them wanting people to continue to work in the office. I didn't feel comfortable doing that, particularly having some of my clients who pretty significant illnesses. I didn't want them coming into the office. So I ended up leaving that. And through the grace of the donations on this project, I've been at it full time since then, just running on donations. And I still swear by that model, especially with a lot of these giant like AAA studios out there that are just milking the shit out of people. It feels good to be like, hey, you know what? If you can afford to pay something, fine. If you can't, that's fine too. I don't know what percentage. I do most of it. The revamp is pretty much like 99% me. When I was working on the original project, I got around chapter 5, I think it was. And sometimes before an update, I would send like my rough draft of the completed game update. It wasn't like my written rough draft or anything. No one's allowed to see that. It's atrocious. But I'd send that out to like one random person, like for the most part. And I found that I would rather have something that was a little more consistent. Met Blayke, who was a fan of the game, reached out to me. We started chatting back and forth. He is very different. He's the opposite of me. And I'm a fan. I don't like to surround myself with people that just agree with me. I'd rather have people that will offset my own weaknesses. I didn't organize things. I didn't plan things. I didn't do outlines. I made shit up on the fly. Like, he's very organized. He had written a book before. He had experience with outlining and plotting, that kind of stuff. And basically I just needed somebody to bounce those ideas off of. He did a really good job of making a suggestion, and then I was allowed to either take it or leave it. And there was just like, hey, ultimately, like this is your baby. So if you don't listen to me and it turns out you should have, that's your fault. Okay. Like that, we agree. Like that 100%, like that's fine. So he came on board and helped me with like a little bit of the writing stuff and just giving pointers, editing some of my stuff, and just generally helping try to keep me a little less scattered when it came to the writing stuff. Jordyn, I brought on a little later. He's my tech guy. I can't do things with Photoshop. Honestly, I'm horrible at that stuff because I'm colorblind. So like, I don't want to deal with all of those kinds. Because the original game, I didn't realize it, but like halfway through the game, Zach's eyes, like I must have hit a button somewhere and I didn't realize it, but Zach's eyes changed color like halfway through the game, and I never noticed it. Yeah. So yeah, that's I have somebody, he helps with a lot of the tech stuff. I'm terrible with tech stuff. I'm bad with computer stuff. I'll get frustrated when things don't work. He's the person that's like, okay, chill, like share your screen, and then kind of like unfucks it for me. I did have one other guy. He's not around anymore. His name was Lazy Jake. He did some of the early animations. He was a fanboy. He won me over and just DM'd me the video that you see on the main menu with the scanning the dorm room and spinning. That was a fanboy made. He made that. Hey, like I really enjoyed your game and I made this for you. And I was like, made me freaking cry. I sat there like in front of the computer watching that thing spin for like 4 hours. And I eventually got his permission to include it in the menu. He came on board later, ended up doing some exterior animation stuff that we haven't seen in the revamp later. It's a chapter 8 thing that took him about 9 months to make. It was one thing that I was like, I'm going to plan this ahead. I made the call to do something about 9 months before I actually wrote that out. And he started working on that.
And you make a lovely comment at the start of the game where you talk about how when you started out, it was just you, but now it belongs to everyone.
Oh, yeah. If there's any aspect of the game that has the most editing, it was that thank you screen. It took me 3 years to write that. about once a week, that was on my desktop. And that was kind of how I grounded myself. Like when I was going through the story, I'd boot that up at the beginning of the day when I was drinking coffee and read through it, make a couple changes. It's definitely probably the most heartfelt aspect of the entire story.
Yeah, I guess congratulations for living the dream a little bit, because we talk to a lot of people who are working on projects like yours, and they've still got to work those day jobs to make the money to pay people and get the resources to be able to put their projects out there, and you've managed to get yourself up to a point where you can, through what sounds like some very generous benefactors online, have been able to do this as pretty much your full-time job. That's really cool. And you've got a really strong and supportive community now, especially on Discord. Like I've got your Discord open in front of me at the moment, and there's a lot of people in there. How has that community evolved over time?
I was really surprised how quickly the guys that helped me with the project suggested making a Discord. I'll be honest, I was kind of resistant to it at first because I like interacting with people, but my concentration is garbage. So if there's like a blinking light somewhere or like a bird flies by, like outside of the window, like I'm effed for like an hour. And I was worried about being on the Discord because I make a point, like every time there's a new person that comes on, like I say hello. I've had a couple people be like, "Oh, nice bot," and then I'll be like, "No, I'm not. I'm not a bot." And they're like, "Oh shit, yeah, my bad." Yeah, the community's been awesome though. I mentioned earlier like that I've gotten feedback, from them before. There's characters in the story that wouldn't be in the story if it wasn't for the community, and sometimes the community realizes that they played a role in that, and other times they won't because I'm not going to tell them because I think that's just fun. But there's a lot of background characters that were supposed to be like in like one scene, and like all of a sudden there'd just be a bunch of people talking and chatting online, and I'd be like, okay, you know what, I'll make up some bullshit for this person and weave them into the story somehow. It'll be fun. What the hell? I didn't plan anything, so it's not like it's going to break anything. I think anybody who's ever done this, I consider myself to be pretty passionate about this. And even then, I think I've had probably 3 times over the past like 7 years and stuff where I've been like, I burn out. Like I don't burn out very often, but the community has like the amount of letters and notes that I've gotten as people like read, particularly after I did chapter 6, that changed everything. And I started getting letters at DMs from people. My patron mailbox was like full, and it was people sharing their story. You guys mentioned earlier about like that universal kind of experience. I grew up in the States. If you couldn't tell, a lot of my writing style is a ton of slang. Nobody's going to understand this. Like, and it's crazy. Like all of a sudden I have people from the other side. You guys are on the other side of the world. I never expected this thing to go across the freaking ocean. And it's insane how universal that experience really, really did get, with all the differences in cultures and viewpoints and stuff like that. Like it's insane to actually consider that there is a universality to some of these experiences. People just pick up on certain things in the story, or it reminds them. I have young people that have read the story and reacted and have never been in a relationship, and now they suddenly have a little courage to go out and try it because they learned about communication, like in the story and stuff like that. I have older guys that'll message me and be like, "Hey, thanks. Like I forgot about all these times when I was growing up. I needed that, and I'm like, but this is insane." I recently admitted, because I never told anybody this, I recently admitted that I'd saved all of those the whole time. Like I'd screenshotted every comment that people had sent me, and I have a secret folder that like when I'd get frustrated, I just go in there and like read one of them, perk my ass up. Like you can't burn out like when your heart's full, man. Like you can't. And people have been generous, not only like financially, with stuff, but people make accounts on itch, and like there's a lot of comments to start with. I made an account just to comment like on this, and like that's cool. I hate making accounts. Like Like the fact that you went through, you tried to figure out a freaking password, you verified your email, like all that garbage. Like,
I don't know. That's kind of like touched my heart a little bit as well. Like I can only imagine like pouring so much of yourself into a project and a piece of art or whatever like it falls into, and then hearing like really great feedback from all these people that you get to like help change their life, even if it's just for a little bit. Like I can imagine that would keep you going, even if you do experience a burnout. So it's kind of a good idea to keep those as like a weapon stash.
And it's nice to know that still after all this time that you can be surprised by that feedback, because I remember just even though it was just written text, the shock in your response when a podcaster from Melbourne, Australia reached out and said, "Hey, can we interview about your game?" You're like, "Really? Oh my god, you wouldn't?"
What?
Yeah, your response was like one of just like you were so genuinely happy, and that to me that felt really good for me too, right? Like it's good to see that it seems like it's continuing to touch people in a particular way, in a really, really positive way. Because I don't know, I think you've got a bit of a timeless story here, right? As things grow and shape, and maybe there's acceptance and better equality in different parts of the world, which does struggle at times. Coming of age is always going to be awkward.
Yeah.
Coming of age, learning your body, learning your sexuality, and that 18, 19-year-old period where you just get pushed out into the world and you're expected to be this mature adult when you're really not. Like I think that's always going to speak to people, don't you reckon?
I'm going to sound like I'm 1,000 years old, like when I say this. I'm an old soul, I guess, but like in an age with like Instagram, where people put out a perfect picture and it's photoshopped and like there's all these perfection things, and I guess like previous generations had that, like magazine models and stuff like that. You compare yourself to movie stars and people in magazines and stuff like that. I think it's good to normalize some of the stupid things in life and like the mistakes that we make and those cringy, awkward moments and everything. If you like a character, suddenly like it normalizes if you've made a mistake or you've been a dummy or done something cringe or something like hey, like, but that character that I really liked did that too, and like maybe that's a little more normal than I think.
Me at 18, I was completely insufferable, so not much has changed probably.
No, and probably never will.
Wow.
That's all right. He's going to be the best man at my wedding. Yeah. I know him. He's fine. He's allowed to make fun of me.
Oh yeah. I'm with you. That's how I show affection to people. If I'm not teasing you,
it's very Australian to do that though as well. It's very Australian to make fun of each other.
And Zach and Braden do it a lot with each other 100%. As well.
Oh yeah, they troll the hell out of each other.
Yeah, but it's such a genuine, sweet interaction. One other thing I just quickly mentioned in my notes as well is and not having seen yet how it turns out for Zach and Braden is I scrawled a note in my notebook when I first started. It was like, normalize nuanced relationships between straight and gay men. Because I just saw that like in the beginning when Braden is, and again, not knowing where Braden goes yet, he's very much, identifying as a straight man. There's still that interesting kind of interaction and engagement between them and, Braden learning to become a bit more comfortable, which I thought was really sweet. The last thing to kind of hear from you is, what's next? You've got the revamp to finish. Do you foresee any other projects on the horizon, or is it still just about getting the revamp completed? I'm
really bad at multitasking. Like enough that like if you see me trying to do two things at once, you should probably just come over and take one of those things away and like let me finish one and then like give it back to me later. I'm terrible at that. And I also think that it's really easy as a developer to get tired of your project or need something new and you want to jump over and do something else. You see a ton of indie developers all of a sudden start a game, abandon it, start a new game, abandon it, and like then they get 10 abandoned games out there. I think that's a mistake. I'm focusing on one thing at a time. I want to do that one thing. I want to do it right. I want to make sure it's done. Like I said earlier, people are depending on me to finish that story. I can't do a slow burn game and then like get hit by a bus or something. Like, I have to finish it. Like, so I take that serious. So the revamp will definitely is the only thing that I'm working on right now. I have recently started a folder with ideas in it, but because I don't know where I'm going to go, people want more from this world. And without discussing the ending of the story, I worked really hard on the ending to check a lot of boxes, because I think there's a lot of different perspectives on the story. A lot of people want certain things from an ending to a story, and I feel like if you screw the ending up, you hurt the entire thing. A bad ending ruins everything. So I worked really hard on the ending to check a lot of boxes for a lot of different reasons.
I'm excited to hear about any more upcoming possible sexy flowcharts, though. So if they do come about, let us know.
I will. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'll let you guys know, and I'll display the sexy flowchart.
Excellent.
Yeah,
So
I got you.
And so for all of our listeners, in order to help, complete this project and assist you further, where can we direct our audience to support you, whether it be financially, itch and things like that? Like, what's the best way to keep
following the journey?
Yeah.
So I have a link tree that has everything in one spot. If I was to say like things that really help with the game is just following on social media, like reposting things, liking things, just getting that traffic. I said near the beginning that I'm terrible at marketing. I've really depended on my audience to tell people, and they have. It's insane how many people have found this thing just through word of mouth. People want to chip in like to the project. Patreon is a way to do that. Itch is a way to do that. I have been very clear that the game is free. The game is free for a reason. People should not feel compelled or feel like they owe money for the game or anything. In fact, when I found out some people have chipped in money and they weren't in a place to do so, I've refunded it. Like I'm not like I don't want to take unless people are really sitting in a good situation, especially as crazy and unpredictable as the damn world is.
Well, we'll include the link tree in our episode notes because I have the link tree because I scanned the QR code on the swim.
Oh yeah.
Poster.
Yeah. That's fun that you found that. That was a Jordyn exclusive. He had that idea and I was like, oh, that'll be awesome. Yeah. That's fun that you found that.
Well, Aaron, thank you so much. This has been actually a really, really cool interview. It's been so cool to hear about just everything that's gone into a really incredible, a really unique and very personal project. And I think all of your success and all of your audience is no surprise. It seems to me that you're coming into this as someone who's never written anything before, just wanting to I just want to tell the story I want to tell. I think that has shined through and has really contributed a lot to just how much people love this. So a big congratulations and thank you for spending time with us today. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you give it a big thumbs up on YouTube or follow the podcast wherever you get your podcast from and leave us a 5-star review. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and Blue Sky and follow along on our live Twitch streams. You can also continue the conversation in our BQN podcast Discord by clicking the link in the episode description. Don't forget that the Bargain Bin Gamer is part of a larger network of podcasts called the BQN. You can support this and other BQN programs by becoming a patron over at patreon.com/BQN. We'd love to hear your feedback on the episode. Leave us a comment on YouTube or send us an email to bargainbingamer, GAYMER, @gmail.com. Until next time, au revoir.
Double T Media.